Okay. So it's just gone 3:30. We're going to start with our next panel. Thank you so much for joining us. And my name is Lorna O'Doherty, and I'm Professor of Trauma, Abuse and Health-Related Research at Coventry University. And I'm also the research partner on the Upfront Survivors project, which is partly supporting today's event. So let me get going. So we know from young people and parents who contributed to the More Than Surviving campaign that to effectively address sexual abuse in education spaces, we need a whole schools approach. And this was recommended in the Ofsted 2021 report. A whole school approach requires not only the essential training for teachers and school staff, but also necessary changes in policy and transformation in relation to the school culture and community. Despite overwhelming evidence that shows how pervasive child sexual abuse and sexual harassment within schools are, little is being done to tackle these issues on a national scale. Where whole school approaches are being implemented, they're often short-term, they vary from one model to another, and they're not sustainably embedded across local areas. Now, recent studies have demonstrated the rise in peer-to-peer abuse within schools, so we're really delighted to introduce you to the NSPCC's Together in Childhood programme. This is a whole school approach which is very much focused on peer-to-peer abuse, and it's been currently developed and evaluated across multiple local areas. This is an interactive panel, so we'll have the first part of the session will be hearing from our panellists, and then we'll have a question and answer session at the end for around 20 minutes. You will have heard the request earlier today, but as an audience member, we just want to remind you about not taking photos or recording any part of this panel or posting any content on social media. It's a closed space, and this is for the safety of all the participants. There may be some filming, but that has been pre-agreed. So I'd now like to introduce Corinne, who is a Development Support Officer with the NSPCC, and our panel entitled Whole School Approaches to Preventing Peer-to-Peer Sexual Harm. And over to you, Corinne.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hi everybody, hi. I feel like we've got quite a challenge ahead because we've just followed two absolutely amazing panel discussions. But what I also really like is the sense that each of the panel discussions is building on the next conversation. And that's what I really want this to be, is a real conversation. So I'm Corinne. Hello everybody, nice to meet you all. I work for the NSPCC, and we are all here to represent our Together for Childhood project, which we'll tell you a little bit more about. So shall I start by asking you all to introduce yourselves, if that's okay? Adam, would you like to go first?
Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm currently a student at Plymouth City College, working a part of a NSPCC group in a group project. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
I'm Simone, I'm a youth worker at the NSPCC.
Hi everyone, I'm Claire White. I lead the research and evaluation for Together for Childhood in Plymouth, so support the team with research to help evidence some of the activities that we're doing, and then the evaluation at the other end, and then I work nationally with colleagues in our other Together for Childhood sites to sort of start building that evidence base around how we work in sexual abuse prevention.
Brilliant, thank you. And we were going to be joined today by Shelley Shaw, who is our Development and Impact Manager, but unfortunately she's not been able to make it, so we'll try and kind of fill in the gaps of the information that Shelley would provide. And I should explain my role. So my background is in social work. I've been with the NSPCC in Plymouth for approximately 8 years, predominantly working with young people who displayed harmful sexual behaviour towards others. So undertaking AIM assessments and therapeutic interventions after that. But for the last 3-4 years or so, I've been working on our Together for Childhood project. So what I'd like to do before we kind of get stuck into the kind of introduction and some of the questions is just to kind of make that statement, and it's been made a number of times today, but again I think it's really, really important to say it, that we are going to be talking about child sexual abuse in our session today. Not in an awful lot of detail, but we are going to be mentioning it. And I say this to give you all a choice about the level of engagement you choose today to engage in this topic. If you decide that today just isn't the day for you to be part of this, that's absolutely fine, and it's about keeping yourself safe in this session. And I say that because we know from prevalence figures, particularly some recent stats from the CSA Centre, that child sexual abuse impacts many, many people. Okay. So if anyone needs support, there are a number of wellbeing spaces available, and we'll all make ourselves available at the end of the panel. Okay, brilliant. And as you've heard, we're going to have a bit of a discussion, some kind of questions about this. We'll leave some time at the end for any questions that you may have. And we're also really honoured that we're going to be joined by Simone, who's going to read a parent's poem just to kind of sum up this session today. So I think that's going to be a really, really nice sort of summary. Okay, so in the panel today, what we're going to talk about is our Together for Childhood project. So the project the idea of the project came from the NSPCC, but it isn't something that's owned by the NSPCC. It's a local project which is being run in Plymouth and involves multiple kind of partners and agencies. So we work very closely with our local authority, with our local police force, with CAMS and Live Well Southwest, all of our health partners, and also some local charities. And the idea behind Together for Childhood is the prevention of child sexual abuse. So I'm talking about prevention, stopping the abuse happening before it takes place. Yep. So that sounds like kind of quite a complex thing to sort of understand and to sort of deliver. And the best way I think of kind of explaining how we manage that mammoth task of preventing child sexual abuse is I'm going to kind of paraphrase a very, very old story that's kind of been repeated so many times that I can't remember who's actually quoted it in the first place. And the story goes about a village where there was a river running through it. And people who lived in the village would frequently notice that, unfortunately, people would be washing ashore in that village having drowned. And one day somebody asked the important question, what's happening upstream that means all of these people are falling in the river? Okay. So all of our focus and all of our services traditionally within the NSPCC and other organisations as well has focused very much on the end point. So somebody has been harmed, there needs to be either a recovery service or a service to prevent further harm. So we're really focusing at the moment on going upstream and thinking about what are the opportunities using a public health approach model. So what are the opportunities at a primary prevention level? So what are the messages that should go out to everybody about how child sexual abuse is preventable? And then what are the secondary prevention opportunities? So secondary prevention would look at those populations or groups of people for whom there might be some evidence about additional risks or additional vulnerabilities. So for example, children who have special educational needs and disabilities, we know that they are at an increased risk of being sexually harmed, but there's also some evidence that they may be at an increase of perpetrating sexual harm towards other children and young people. So that's an example of our kind of secondary prevention work. So in the session today, we are going to talk to you about one of the many, many Together for Childhood activities that make up the whole of child sexual abuse prevention. And the activity we're going to talk about is our whole school approach model to the prevention of child sexual abuse within school settings. Now, this is just one of many whole school approach models. We think it's pretty good. We've done some evaluation of it, but others are available. So we're not saying this is the only way that you can do it, but just that it's really, really important to do it, to have a whole school approach to this sort of work. Our whole school approach model is primarily aimed at secondary age children. So that's like key stage 3 to 5, I think, isn't it? So ours is aimed at secondary school young people, but we are beginning to think a little bit about what can we do for the primary age, and maybe even braver than that, what can we do for the early years, and what potentially can we do for the post-16 college sort of population of young people as well. But for now, we're going to talk about the secondary model. I won't get ahead of myself. So the work that we've been doing started approximately 3 years ago. And coincided with lots of kind of emerging evidence, lots of reports about the issue of sexual harm within schools and specifically peer-to-peer harms. So it was around about this time that we had the emergence of the evidence from Everyone's Invited, and then we had the Ofsted quick review on the back of that. So all of this kind of information and this real sense of urgency about this piece of work kind of coming together with the beginning of our project. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk you through some of the activities that we've been involved with. Claire is our evaluation officer, and she's going to give you an evaluation perspective of some of the work we've done. Simone, as someone who's been responsible for delivering lots of these aspects within schools, will give her perspective. And Adam, as a young person who was part of many of these activities within schools, can give his perspective as well about what you thought about it, what was effective, what would you like to change, and so on. Okay. And I think just to kind of summarise really, something that's kind of been said by particularly the previous group, about this real sense that, for me, I always kind of thought about relationships and sex education as more than just a subject that was taught in schools. So there's a real opportunity there to view this as a mechanism for safeguarding children and young people. But I think based on the earlier panel's conversation, I think I want to kind of widen that out a little bit more and really think about the opportunities for the physical space of schools and all of the staff that operate within them to also contribute that role to sort of safeguarding children and young people. Okay. So with that in mind, I am going to come to Claire with the first question, if I could. Claire, thank you. So Claire, whole school approaches, this is a word I've bandied around a few times. Can you tell us a little bit about what a whole school approach is and what's the emerging evidence that would suggest that these are the way to go?
Okay. Well, like you said, sexual abuse, a really complex issue. Peer-to-peer sexual abuse, again, a really complex issue. So when we're thinking about strategies to tackle it as an issue, it's got to be something that involves multiple factors that are coordinated, that come together in a way to think about it from very many different perspectives. So whole school approach is kind of that ideal approach, I guess, within a school environment to thinking about how you bring relationships, how you bring values, how you bring beliefs and safety and get them embedded within that school culture, that school ethos, really across lots of different areas. So when you're talking about relationships and sex education, predominantly we're talking about teaching and learning, but in isolation that has kind of limited benefit, limited impact. So if you're thinking about changing knowledge and attitudes and behaviours across the school community, then really that's going to fall into kind of four main areas. So you're thinking about the school curriculum, you're thinking about teaching and learning approach, the formal policies and procedures and practices of that school, and then also the culture and the kind of, I guess, the environment, the building environment, the context that all of that's happening in as well. And for sometimes when you're talking about whole school approach as well, can be a little bit trickier, particularly when we're talking about secondary school age children, is that link between school and home and the community, if we're able to, so bringing that together as well. So I guess there are lots of different parts, different components that can make up whole school approach, and I'll throw some out there, but in no particular order of importance really. As I say, these need to be sort of coordinated. So you've got needing to have that buy-in, that ownership from school leadership, and by leadership I also mean the governors, those people that help to inform the school, to hold the school to account on what they're doing. So bringing them in to really understand that those respected relationships and safeguarding and well-being of pupils and the staff as well is really at the heart, is the ethos of that school. Making relationships and sex education a priority within the curriculum. So we've already heard so much in different panels today about the weight that's given to maths and science and English and so on. So it's really elevating, I guess, the importance of RSE and within schools. But delivering that as well, and in not only a way that's age appropriate, but that's developmentally appropriate. So it's giving thought to the changing nature of young people's needs as they go through school. So we already know from things like the Internet Watch Foundation, children are accessing harmful content at a much younger age online. They're accessing pornography and violent pornography at a much younger age online. So the schools need to be reactive to those changes in culture and those changes in the things that children are experiencing. Something that we think is really important in Together for Childhood is student participation. So giving them a voice, giving them a chance to actually feed in to not only just the content but the focus of their relationships and sex education, listening to their views, listening to their priorities, and how they think it should be taught as well, and not shying away from that, which again subjects. We've heard a lot of today. Thinking back to some of the things that Nate and Lewis were talking about previously as well, is that developing the language in schools around how we address these issues of sexual harm and sexual harassment and inappropriate beliefs and attitudes, and having that sort of strength to challenge those beliefs and values.
Just to name it in the first place. To be brave enough, I think, just to say the words.
Just to call it out, call it in, but just call it, if you can. We've also got obviously changing school policies and their practices, so that's not just thinking about safeguarding policies, but what's their online safety policy, what's their policy around bullying, what's their policy around, it could be a whole range of things, like reviewing all of those policies really and thinking about how they all contribute to that culture within the school. But then also increasing where possible. I mean, I am talking blue sky thinking here a lot of the time, but thinking about increasing that pastoral support for children and young people, around their health and well-being, around their mental health and well-being, around sexual health as well, making sure those services are available. And then comprehensive training for teaching staff, not just, this is what a pornography PowerPoint looks like, but skills-based training. How do you deliver that effectively to the school? And that's, not possibly for every single teacher, but for the teachers where that feels appropriate.
So it's almost having that suite of training opportunities available. Yeah. And as you say, some of that might be an introduction to child sexual abuse and what that might look like. And one thing that we've kind of started locally, which I think would kind of fit really nicely with this, is the CSA Centre. I'll be talking about them a lot today, so I'd highly recommend that you look up their work. The CSA Centre have recently published a fantastic document which is aimed at designated safeguarding leads within schools, and it's all about how to safety plan after an incident of harmful sexual behaviour has occurred within a school setting. So again, as part of our whole school approach, we are offering an opportunity for our local DSOs to come together and really kind of digest that document, have a go at writing a few safety plans with a little bit of support around that. So,
yeah, definitely. And resources are so important.
Something useful and practical.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, one of the things I hear so much from teachers is that, yes, we want to deliver really good, effective relationships and sex education, but within all of the other roles and responsibilities I don't have time to spend half a day trawling the internet to try and find the best resources for the students, the best resources for their needs. And when I'm thinking about the local context and the local needs of these students, how do I find the ones that speak to their living experience in school and outside of school as well, and online and so on. So you asked about the evidence as well.
Yeah.
Well, what can I say? There is limited experience, evidence. Particularly in the UK. What's helpful is, as you mentioned earlier, that there are a few whole school approach models that are being used. Quite often around things like mental health and well-being, bullying, online safety, and so on. And some of them show real promise. And so it's plucking the real key elements, I suppose, the what do you call it, the sort of building blocks from those things that work, and transferring them to a model that talks about healthy relationships and preventing sexual harm.
That's a really good way of thinking about it, Claire, because having those key building blocks, I think what that allows is that more localised, responsive detail to be built upon those key elements, because what might be relevant for our schools in Plymouth might be very, very different to a school that's in Yorkshire or Cardiff or somewhere else. So I think having those key gold standard building blocks, and then the kind of detail can fall locally, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I can speak to as well, so Tender, who obviously had their panel earlier on this morning. They've recently reported on their work on a whole school approach to addressing violence against women and girls and healthy relationships within school, and they had 6 really nice, clear kind of, you know, cornerstones, I suppose, of what makes a good whole school approach to tackling issues. So I guess, you know, thinking about the things that we're learning from this emerging evidence, you know, what you hear is that there's really good support for these approaches from students and from staff within the schools. There, you know, a lot of buy-in and a lot of ambition and passion for these things to happen. But you've got to build that ownership. You've got to involve that co-production with young people. That's really key to making sure it works. And then fairly consistent challenges as well. Yeah. How do you balance this against the curriculum, you know, the statutory assessed curriculum components of the school that they're all trying to attain? How do you make this important when this is being, you know, highlighted as such an important things for the schools? So I think that's, you know, a lot of the challenges are the same within these approaches.
And again, making me think of what the earlier panellists were saying about how actually the really, really important work takes time. It's not a come in, do an assembly, fix everything and disappear again. It's hard, it's tricky, it's lengthy, it's expensive, it involves a lot of resource, but it's really worth doing. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you. So, sorry, this is going to be the Claire show this afternoon. So, Claire, and again, kind of Simone, you might want to chip in with parts of this as well. So, you've given us a bit of an overview there of kind of what a whole school approach is. And actually, before I move on, I will just, if I could, give a very recent example of what isn't a whole school approach, if that's okay. So, locally, we've been doing some really fantastic work with some local schools around the topic of pornography. So, I think we were being quite ambitious, so we were kind of aiming our session at young people in years 7 and 8.
11, 12 years old.
Yeah, 11, 12-year-old children, which kind of, I think for a lot of people would be like, what, we're talking to them about pornography? Terrifying. But really utilising, again, an idea that's kind of come up today about the real value of kind of drama-based approaches to really kind of explore these subjects in some depth. So recently we have developed a drama production, and we were really, really excited, and we went into a local secondary school, into the year 7s for their assembly very recently. And of course, in the assembly, the drama is involving words like
pornography, nudes, OnlyFans. As you can imagine, the audience got very, very excited at some of these words.
There was lots of giggling, understandably. For a lot of these young people, this is the first time they'd heard these words, particularly in a school setting. And what was the response, Simone, from the head of year?
So at the end, several of them got get held back. They all got shouted at. They got told that they basically showed the school up. However, sitting out looking, and other workers as well, that every time the young person spoke within that drama production, they were asking each other, like, oh, I can't believe they just said that word in our school. So it wasn't as if they were just talking amongst each other. They were literally talking about what was happening in front of them. However, at the end, they all got shouted at. So it just basically, it goes back, like, you want these students to talk to you about pornography, but you've just shut them down for laughing about something that we would laugh at, and these are year 7s, and it was just very like, we've gone in, this is the outcome, and then actually when we go away, that wasn't going to happen because they got shut down.
There was a sense of it feeling quite tokenistic, unfortunately, and that's the exact opposite to what a whole school approach should be.
Rather than exploring with them of why they were giggling and what was going on for them at that moment, rather than shutting them down. Because 9 times out of 10, as we know, once we shut young people down, they don't then want to open up to us. And it's us the issue, not them.
I just thought it was a very recent example that would kind of illustrate that slightly. So thank you, Simone. Sorry, Claire, back to you. So, having given us an overview of what whole school approach is and what the evidence is about why they're really effective, could you tell us a little bit more about our Together for Childhood whole school
Yes,
approach
I
and
can.
what elements are part of that?
I can, because luckily I wrote some down. So staff training, really important. Staff within schools, they had a session on introduction to child sexual abuse. I think it's what's coming out from other research, do lots of research and evaluation around this project, and what we're learning is that when you ask people what they think child sexual abuse prevention is, they say, oh, we've got to recognise the signs of abuse and then we've got to know how to respond to it. But you're too late by then. So having that conversation around, well, what actually does prevention mean? How are we going to prevent it? And, you know, obviously recognising those signs and as well, and being able to respond appropriately and seek that help. So child sexual abuse, harmful sexual behaviour, issues in schools. We know that this happens. Again, some work that we've done in the past as part of a slightly separate, it's something that forms part of the whole school approach now, but looking at, CPOMS was the programme that they were using, Safeguarding System, which I know is quite widespread in the country, but having a real in-depth look at that data to say these things that you've classified as peer issues are actually sexual harassment that you haven't noticed in that way and hasn't been dealt with in that way. So harmful sexual behaviour.
And that was a really interesting project because that utilised, you guys might be familiar with the concept of traffic light tools. So Brook traffic light tool is one example. Another one is the Hackett traffic light tool. So it just kind of illustrates this idea that all young people's sexual behaviour can fall on a continuum from what is green, i.e. age appropriate expected, all the way through to ambers, those that you might be a little bit more concerned about, through to the reds, so the more kind of harmful sorts of behaviours. And the real value we found in kind of using this language within a school setting is it can help focus the mind about what I'm actually seeing. Is that okay, or is that something that I need to be concerned about? So having that kind of commonality of language has been incredibly helpful, we found, within our kind of school settings locally.
And the staff found were really helpful as well. One of the other things that formed part of that training package was bystander approaches. Again, that was all the staff within the school, and all the staff, not just teachers, obviously, people that are working in the playgrounds, people that are working in canteens, you know, they're likely even more likely to see that kind of behaviour and hear those kinds of those conversations. There was also trauma-informed approach training that was carried out. And then, you know, how do you respond? If a child comes to you, if you see something that really raises your concerns, you know, gives you that kind of gut feeling that there's something not right, how do you respond to that? What are the services locally that enable you to support that child and that potentially the child's family as well? So that was the staff training. There was Empower, fantastic project.
We could talk about, you could have easily kind of spoken about hours.
Oh,
Oh dear.
I'm not excited about Empower and the tech.
So Empower started with a group of young people who came together to create a definition really of healthy relationships, wasn't it? And then from that there were lots of conversations around what is wrong with their relationships and sex education. Why isn't it resonating with them? Why are they not, you know, feeling that it's actually that they're learning something from it, that it's informing their lives? So they created a sort of it was a quality assurance framework, wasn't it, that kind of listed the things that they wanted from their relationships and sex education, so in terms of the content and the delivery of that. So that was having things like wraparound support, so making sure that they're supported before, during and after those lessons, in terms of especially where it was very sensitive content. It was having that opportunity to really explore topics in depth, so having those discussions in that safe and non-judgmental environment, just making sure that they weren't getting taught at, which is what they were describing to us. You know, we're sat in assembly, we get 20 minutes from somebody who tells that's up to date and accurate. So, when we evaluated these projects, we were talking to teachers who were saying that, they were delivering PowerPoints that talked about MySpace and Blockbuster Video, and they knew that they needed to update this information, but they just didn't have time to do it. They didn't know where to get the other resources from, so it needed to be.
I remember a young person telling us that they knew that when the teacher wheeled in the VHS machine, they were really in trouble because it was going to be so ancient.
It's not relevant at all.
And teacher confidence as well, really important. There's nothing worse for those young people, than sitting in a lesson, listening to something that you're uncomfortable about hearing when the adult delivering it to you is uncomfortable about talking about it as well. So how do you increase that confidence? So they created this quality assurance framework, which we then took to, was it 8 schools?
Yeah,
I think,
7.
7 or 8 schools, just to pilot test it, just to see how it works. And they created Empower groups within each school, and the young people there then assessed the lesson plans or the RSE resources that were being delivered to them with the teacher, and then used this quality assurance framework to decide whether there was content or delivery elements that needed updating, changing, scrapping, whatever they thought about it. So that's how we piloted that.
And teachers were really saying, weren't they, that kind of gave them an increased level of confidence. There was some reassurance that actually, but a young person's had an eye on this, and they said it's all right. So I feel a little bit more confident now standing up and delivering this to a whole classroom.
Yeah. What else have I got on the list?
We had
focused education.
Yeah.
So again, those really tricky topics that teachers find very difficult to deliver, especially if you're a PE teacher or a science teacher or something. You don't want to be talking about pornography with young people. So we partnered with the local charity called The Zone, who do a lot of work around health and well-being and sexual health and so on. And they went into the school to deliver focused sessions around certain elements of their education. So that was about brain development, it was pornography, consent in a lot of depth, and gender identity. So they delivered those sessions to the young people. We had the Young Voices project, which Adam was very much a part of, and I'm sure you can talk more about that in a bit when we come to that lovely section. So I won't go into that in too much depth, but that was a 3-year project that was funded by the Samworth Foundation for us to deliver work again in a participatory way with young people. And then I guess the last part of that in terms of discrete activities was about this local pathway. So, what are the services that are available in your local area to your school that you can access when you need help and support for a young person or even for yourself? So very much kind of scoping out what that help and support looked like and making sure that schools were very well aware of how they could access that. So all of these activities were kind of developed in isolation over a period of years, and then that was put together. You've got a slide, Corinne.
I don't have a slide.
That was put together to create a portal that involved those activities. Not the big blank square on the screen, that wouldn't have been very helpful to anybody. The portal was put together so that schools could access information about these activities, how they implement them in school, all the resources alongside them, and then evidence that we had, to suggest that they would be helpful to that school as part of a whole school approach. And this is what it kind of, or very
It's
small
like a
part
little
of it,
snapshot
looks
of
like.
Thank you, Claire. And I think at this point it's fair to say that I think what was an interesting feature of all of the work that we delivered within schools was that young people, we really tried to put young people's voice at the centre of all of the work that we did. So a few panellists today have kind of already spoken about, and Claire, you mentioned it as well, this sort of sense of young people's experience being largely a passive one when it comes to relationships and sex education. You will sit in an assembly and you will be quiet and you will nod in the correct places and you won't cause a fuss. It wasn't opening up those opportunities for real in-depth exploration. But what does that mean? And how do I apply that when I'm at a party next Friday night, or this thing happened to my friend, and what does that mean in relation to that piece of information that you just told me? And unfortunately, that can't happen within assemblies. Young people would be terrified to put their hand up and say, can I just explore this topic, please? It just isn't going to happen.
No.
Okay, thank you very much. All right then, so Adam, we're going to ask you a question now, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So Adam, you were involved in the Young Voices project, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Could you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Well, the Young Voices project was aimed for younger students, like year 8, year 9s, about talking healthy relationships.
Yeah.
And we made a campaign video with, I believe it was Alter Ego, I don't know what his name was, Sean, was it?
Yep.
Yeah. He helped us make the campaign video talking about the different, differences between healthy and unhealthy relationships. And
How did you find out about the project in the first place?
well, Simone just turned up to my
the
secondary, just out of the ordinary. Started talking about the different things that she does with the young people, and I just believe that why not just get involved, get my point across in different sensitive kind of topics. As a younger individual, I could express my experiences.
Yeah. And you would have been in, what, year 9 or year 10 at the time, I think?
Year 9.
Year 9, yeah. There was something about it you thought, I've got something to say here.
Yeah. I still remember she turned up to my science lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not beyond following children around schools. Okay. And can you remember how many young people were in your Young Voices group within your school?
Jesus Christ. About like 8 to 10 people.
Yeah. So it was a relatively small group.
Yeah.
And did you know many of those young people to start with?
Most of them, yeah.
Because they were mainly in your year group?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. So how did it work then? So Simone came in over a number of weeks? Or?
Well, Simone was keep on coming to secondary with Rachel, just grabbing people out of lessons, which I enjoyed.
A little bit more formal than that.
And she was just like talking about all the projects that she and Rachel are doing outside school, just helping out the younger students with different topics and all that. So then, they had a little chat about everything. They got the rough idea of doing a campaign video, and we just got straight to it.
Yeah. So tell us about the campaign video. I mean, was there like a process of writing a script and all of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, that was the part of doing a script, learning lines, which I absolutely hated. But it was alright, it was pretty good. We went to Central Park, done the video and everything. It was class.
Class, it was class, it really was. And then what was the idea? So once you created the video, and by the way, we're going to see the video in a moment. What was the idea once the video had been created? What was the plan? What were you going to do with it?
To send it, make it more public for everyone to watch, so they can also be informed about different differences about healthy relationships, so you can just stay safe.
Yeah, brilliant. So the idea was that it was going to be kind of shared, I think, within your school environment?
Yeah, school and just locally.
Yeah, and it was shared kind of locally across Plymouth, so as part of 16 Days of Action against gender-based violence, this campaign video was shared. And I think, Simone, what was really nice about this project, and I will play the video, I promise, this was kind of replicated, this Young Voices project, in a number of schools, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and we've done it in 5 mainstream schools, 1 SEND and 1 youth group, and every single group worked differently, and so did the schools. It was really interesting.
So they all of the young people came up with their like unique campaign videos that were used within that particular context, and then kind of across the city of Plymouth.
Yeah.
And these are some of the things that are sort of featured in the portal as it exists. So we've got some discrete campaigns that could be used as part of an RSE delivery, but also within the portal we've given a lot of detail about the approach that Simone and colleagues took in order to kind of get to to those campaign videos. So shall I play the video? Would you like to see it?
Jesus Christ.
It's ages.
Yeah, I know.
Great.
But I hate it.
It's brilliant. Oh, you're amazing.
I look like a mug.
You don't. You're so much more.
Throughout the course of your life, you're going to have lots of different sorts of relationships with lots of different people. Friends, family, family friends, school friends, partners, work colleagues.
But today we want to talk to you about the relationships you have with your peers and what makes a healthy peer relationship.
All of us benefit from the social and emotional support that friendships can offer.
But things can also go wrong. It's important to know the difference between healthy peer relationships and unhealthy ones. So, what makes a healthy peer relationship?
Being yourself. Changing yourself to please someone else won't work and will result in issues. Have the courage to be yourself.
Honesty.
It's important that you feel comfortable talking honestly about issues in your relationships, that you can talk openly about any concerns or any problems. If you lie to your friends or your partners, or if they lie to you, then it's going to result in issues.
Good communication.
You need to be able to discuss things that are important to you. You need to be able to speak to your friends and partners about what you're thinking and feeling.
And you need to listen to each other too. You also need to be able to compromise in order to find solutions. Respect.
You need to respect and support each other. You need to respect your friends, and you need to respect yourself too. This might mean sometimes having the courage and self-confidence to say no to things that make you uncomfortable.
Consent.
It's important that you are never forced, pressured, tricked, or manipulated into doing anything that you don't want to do or that makes you feel uncomfortable. And it's important that you don't do that to your friends or partners too. True consent is when you truly do have an option to say no without being made to feel bad.
Feeling safe.
You need to be kind to each other and helpful. If you don't feel safe in a relationship, if you feel threatened in any way, you're not in a healthy relationship.
Feeling safe is both emotional and physical. It's important to know that your friends or partners won't try to hurt your feelings by bullying, name-calling, spreading rumours, harassing, isolating, or not respecting boundaries. It's also important that no one hurts or abuses anyone physically or sexually either.
Trust, loyalty, and integrity.
It's important to know that you can count on your friends and that they can count on you. You need to have each other's best interests at heart, and you need to have integrity. To choose to do the right thing in any situation, even if no one is watching.
Equality.
You need to have an equal amount of power in your relationship. If someone is constantly controlling or bossing you around, or if you are the only one putting all of the effort in the relationship, then you do not have equality.
Appropriate behaviour and language.
Sexual language, racist, homophobic, transphobic, sexist, or unwanted comments are not appropriate and can hurt people. It's not okay to simply say, "It's just banter." Our words and actions can have consequences.
Support.
You need to be there for each other. You need to listen to each other, to help each other, and to provide physical and emotional support to each other. You also need to make sure that your friends get help if they really need it. You have a responsibility to look out for your friends.
Who can you speak to if you have any questions, worries, or concerns?
It can sometimes be hard to speak up or to ask for help or advice. Turning to a trusted adult can be a really good idea. Maybe a parent, carer, a teacher, a youth worker, or a sports leader. You could also contact charities like Childline or go online and visit the Couth website. You could also contact local organisations like The Zone.
It's important to know that you are in lots of different sorts of relationships with lots of different people.
It's important to know what makes those relationships healthy and what makes them unhealthy.
It's important to know that there is help out there if you have any questions, worries, or concerns.
It's important to know that you are not alone.
And just to say, the script was created by young people. This wasn't our language. This was what they decided. And again, to kind of reiterate the point that Claire and others have made about the importance of this being an ongoing conversation. It's not enough to just show that video and say, job done. This video is part of a wider package. This video could be used as part of a teaching resource. This video could be improved upon, dare I say. Maybe we could next year have another group of young people who want to create their own, and just really using that as a kind of jumping off point. Well done, well done. Okay.
Well done,
Go on, Adam.
Simone, I'm going to come to you next, if I could, please.
Yep.
So, Simone, you were responsible for kind of going in and delivering many of these aspects within school settings. So
Yes.
you delivered the Young Voices sessions in the various schools, and you also delivered lots of the Empower sessions as well. Could you tell us a little bit more about your experience of facilitating some of those sessions, particularly within a school environment? So what sort of challenges did you come up against and how did you manage these?
Well, at first, we wanted to go in and get interest first. So we would pop ourselves in the playground at lunchtime. But what we found was that didn't really work because I think the young people seen shiny new people in their playground and think, why are these people here? So it got changed to like an assembly. So we would let the young people know what we want of them, why we are there. But we found that didn't work. We found it worked better when they were having them conversations one-to-one with us rather than being talked at in the assembly. So at first that was a challenge, just trying to get the school on board with the way we work, with a youth work value. That was coherent throughout all of our work, was that youth work value using the young person's voice straight from the off. So can you just say the question?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so did you find that sometimes that youth work approach potentially rubbed up a little bit
with the schools?
with
Yes,
the schools?
we found this a lot with the school, because with the youth work we come with that informal educator. We can talk to young people about pornography, about nudes, all sorts. However, when you're going into a school, it's a little bit different. Obviously, certain language within the schools are not allowed. Whereas in our sessions, we did allow to a certain degree because we still ran along with policy and the way the schools ran, but not forgetting that this is the young person's real life. And if we weren't their full voice, and we've got to let them explore it on their level. That was the battle with the schools, was the language, what we are actually talking about within these sessions.
And Simone, can you tell me or tell us a little bit about the work that you did with the School for Children with Additional Needs and how
Yes.
you were able to kind of adapt some of the work? And do you know what, while you're doing that, I'll just flick forward to
Yeah, so most of our work was, we've done 5 different campaigns in mainstream, 1 in a youth group, and then we went to a SEND school. Now this was completely different. This actually started up during COVID. So the young people were post-16, they had a range of disabilities. So we started online. It took us around about 6 months to build relationships with these young people, just them getting to know who me and my colleague were, that we weren't strangers, that we were actually safe people. Because with these young people as well, the work is very direct, it was very black and white, we couldn't go around the houses. Like with Adam's group, we could talk about other things and come off topic, whereas in the special school, it was focused. It was around consent. We spent a whole year with post-16 students, believe it or not, going on to college, talking about consent. Not many of them had a clue what no meant. And that's why we've come with no, yes, and don't know, because it is all right to change your mind. But whereas Adam, we were with you about 6 months, Milford's a year, just due to their understanding and how slow we had to go. And then when we got the company in, again, them working with the young people, giving them that chance to grow with them and explore what we've been doing over like a long time frame, right? Because obviously we've got outcomes and we've got to get to this at this stage. But we were mindful before going in that this work's going to be a little different. It wasn't a little, there was a massive difference. But we were able to use our youth work values to run in line with the school. And also the schools teaching staff having more of an input on what resources we bring to lessons and what we are talking about.
So there was a bit of a sense, I think, wasn't there, that you mentioned that these young people were sort of 16
Post-16.
Post-16, sort of 16, 17, some of them even 18.
Yeah.
And that conversations about consent were only just happening.
Yeah.
Or there were kind of misunderstandings about what consent meant and so on. So you guys spending almost 12 months. I think you were going in every week, weren't you?
We were in every week. And sometimes the sessions wouldn't even be around consent. They would just be going in to play games, just to give them that relaxed session, because the way they were learning was completely different. Like with Adam, an hour session, boom, done. With them, an hour session was more like 3 hours, if you get what I mean. Because
so
you just
need to reinforce and
literally
the conversations. And so just so you guys know that this is a mural that is painted within that school setting now. And it doesn't come across very well in this image, but we've also kind of made it into smaller jigsaw pieces. So the idea that consent is a jigsaw, that actually it isn't just a one-sided thing, that actually, you know, there are multiple people in the consent, and the aspects of it need to kind of come together to make the whole, which is consent. So again, kind of within that school, we understand that work that you guys did is being replicated by the school staff, and the jigsaw that exists and the mural on the wall is used as a visual aid to further those conversations.
Yes.
So, fantastic. Thank you. Anything else you want to say about that one? No?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, Claire, can I come back to you at this point, if that's okay? So we've talked about what whole school approach is, we've talked about what the evidence says about, you know, what the emerging evidence says about the value of those. You've spoken a little bit about what the elements of our whole school approach was. You undertook some evaluation of some aspects of our local provision. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the highlights from that, please?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, it's loads.
We haven't got that much longer, have we? Well, I think, you know, Empower proved to be a really, really good project. Probably even more so than we anticipated at the beginning of what the sort of really positive outcomes would be from that. So, as I said earlier, it was piloted in about 7 or 8 schools. It was 8. There were 6 mainstream schools, SEND school,
And a pupil
and alternative provision school. So we did various interviews with teachers, focus groups with young people, just to really find out about how they'd found this process of evaluating and quality assuring these relationships and sex education resources and lesson plans and content and so on. And I suppose what mostly came out of that was that the young people and the teachers, for that matter, actually recognised the value and the power in those students' voices. So it wasn't just a case of, you use the word tokenistic already, you know, just sitting there going through this quality assurance framework and then going, yes, that's a good resource, yes, that's a bad resource, or what have you. It was really a case of young people saying, I don't like that term that you use there. I think that video's outdated. This particular part of this lesson doesn't reflect our lives. And the teacher going, right, well, let's find something to change it with then. So that actually at the end of that session that they were having each week, the resource had changed and was reflecting those really key elements that they wanted to see within the resources that were being used. And then they were using those resources then. So say it was a year 10 group that were looking at perhaps lessons that year 8s might have been receiving. It would be go through this quality assurance process, and then it would be used with the year 8 students who would go, yeah, that's much better.
And then we would hope that those year 8 students would become the year 10, so it's that repeated
so it's
process
like
of evaluation.
Through the whole the whole trajectory really of those children's lives. So that was one of the real key things. You mentioned confidence earlier on. So the teachers really did say that they felt more confident in delivering those sessions that had been quality assured. You know, caveat there is probably on the large part that they'd actually had a discussion with the young people. So through going through that process of talking about these topics, they suddenly brought down that anxiety level of then delivering it to another cohort of children. but they had more confidence that what they were delivering was good quality. But then the students as well, so going back to what I was saying about, you know, year 10s changing it for the year 8s, those year 8s were then more confident that what they were being given in terms of learning was of better quality and was more relevant and reflected their lives and things that they're dealing with on an everyday level. I think one of the other key things that we've had, so wraparound support was one of those elements of the framework, and the teachers really took that on board. So in one school, we had a teacher that had he'd really changed his kind of mindset about how he delivered things. So he was saying, so this was in a different sense school to where the mural was created, but he'd suddenly had this light bulb moment where he realised that out of the 10 students that were in his class, only 2 of them were female, and so some of the things that he was talking about made those girls feel really uncomfortable, and so he changed the way that he was delivering the lessons. In another school, they changed around all of their PowerPoint things, so their typical kind of approach would be to go through all the content, and then if you're having issues and you want some support, this is where you can go to. But then they recognised that actually sometimes we don't get to the end of the PowerPoint before the end of the lesson, so that's not very helpful for these students. So let's move that slide to the beginning and start the lesson with, if you're having any issues with this content, this is where you can go.
And there was one school that kind of gave students advance notice of subjects, like weeks in advance. So
Absolutely.
in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be talking about female genital mutilation.
Yeah, and if you don't want to talk about that, or if you've any concerns, you can come speak to me. You can sit out the lesson. You can do whatever you want to.
But then there were other schools teaching female genital mutilation to year 7s last session on a Friday, and it was a bit conflicting of like, we're now letting them young people go away. First time I heard about it on a weekend with lots of unanswered questions.
Yeah. So it really had good outcomes and impact in terms of changing those practices and making sure the students were supported through that learning journey, I guess. Young Voices was another evaluation that we did.
Has been published and is available on NSPCC Learning. Should you like to?
Should you wish to read it. But again, just the young people that were involved in that, not only were they having so much influence on the teachers within the school, recognising the power of their voices, and these amazing videos, and there's a rap, and all these other different projects that they were creating, giving the adults around them real insight into what issues they're facing and how they deal with it, and the language that they use. So that was one of our real key findings. The other was that, not unexpectedly, we know this, is that, the young people were getting a better level of education from being part of those discussion groups. They were able to really explore those topics and to have conversations. And because they were with Simone and Rachel, feeling that it was a non-judgmental environment, it was a safe environment. You could ask those questions that you'd never ask your teacher, or that you'd feel stupid to say in front of perhaps other peers in your school. Positive changes as well, changes in self-confidence, increases in self-confidence, increases in self-efficacy. I mean, the amount of young people that told us that they'd wanted to get more involved in other sort of projects on advocacy. So yes, they were interested in this, but then they had a thought, well, actually, I'm going to join, or I'm going to start even this forum so that we can discuss things like mental health within the school, and how we can address that collectively, as a young people, as a student body, what we can actually do about that. And there's quite a few of those young people that have joined our Young People's Advisory Group now in Together for Childhood. Point factor. Other students loved the relevance of these videos. They said they're people that we know, they're in environments that we know, we can really relate to that. And actually, there was a couple of them that said, much more likely to listen to this than I am if an adult was going to tell me the same thing. This works really well. So that peer learning was
something
really
special about that, wasn't
was
there?
really good. And then I think the key thing that came out of this, and I think it's fair to say for Empower as well, and other projects that we've done, is that one of these unintended findings really from it, or outcomes from it really, was that participation equals leads to safeguarding.
They are
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's not
Absolutely.
this or this. They are one and the same.
Yeah, and it's not just about creating those environments for those discussions, to be able to ask questions, feeling safe to explore those subjects. It's about giving young people the confidence
To do it
that you're
themselves.
going to listen to them,
Yeah.
and then you're going to act on the information that you give them. And once you raise that level of confidence and empowerment in young people, they feel comfortable to come and talk to you about anything that's bothering them.
And by
that had
extension-
real tangible safeguarding implications.
Because if we think about young people who maybe have made attempts at a verbal disclosure historically and have received perhaps a less than favourable response, the value of working with a group of adults who are saying very explicitly to young people, I am listening, and the things that you tell me, I am taking seriously,
Yeah.
and I'm doing something about that, and this is what I'm doing. So being able to kind of replicate that message for those young people that might have experienced harm and may wish to disclose in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not sugarcoating it. Obviously, there were challenges there as well. Simone, you mentioned about, having that youth work approach, and that's something that it took some of the school staff and the schools quite a while to get to grips with. I mean, when you're walking past a classroom and there's, disruptive behaviour and bad language, and that was just from Simone. Only joking. But, that's quite hard for the teachers to understand, that it takes weeks and weeks and weeks. Yes, there's an end point. They're creating a campaign, but you're not going to do that in an hour. You're not going to do that even in 3 weeks. It's something that's developmental. It's going to take time, and those relationships, that mucking around in the class and using the language that they're using and so on, that's so important because these young people have never, so many of them have never done that before. So one of the big things that we learned through that evaluation was that having those skills to facilitate those sessions rather than to run them, but to actually work with the young people, is really important to even build that idea of what participation is. We're not just saying, what do you think? Oh yeah, I'll write that down. It's really meaningful, and it takes time to build that and to make sure that the young people know that you're listening to them and that you're going to do something with that. And so they're not just wasting their time by being there. The other big challenge that's come out with a lot of our evaluation findings is just time, resource, capacity. Schools are facing so many challenges. We all know that. Teachers are stretched beyond belief. They're dealing with so many different issues and so many what's the word I'm looking for? They're under a lot of pressure
Demands all the time.
to perform, to get their students to perform and so on. So when we're saying to them, right, we need a group of kids and we're going to take them out for an hour or two a week and we're going to do this in one of your classrooms, are you not using one? That kind of thing. It's really hard for them to commit to that.
Yeah.
So in terms of sustainability, is it practical to then say, right, we've taught you how to do it, now you run those groups within your schools? Is there really a teacher that's able to do that? And I guess that's that cultural change that I was talking about earlier on, is thinking about elevating the importance of relationships education, of sex education, and how vital that is to young people's well-being, not just when they're older, but throughout the course of their lives as well. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Claire. And Adam, if I can come to you, because I think this next bit would be quite interesting, actually. So Claire's kind of given some evaluation there of the Young Voices project. So this is kind of all of the many schools and the youth group. But from your perspective, what did you like about it?
I liked everything, to be honest, but the main thing that I actually liked is the fact that I can be in a group of people that I can open up talking about sensitive topics. Like, there are numerous people that, like my age or younger, that don't really like talking about sensitive topics like porn, consent and all that. But being in the NSPCC, you can actually feel comfortable and just open up.
So you always felt like it was a safe place with safe people to do that. Yeah. And so Claire spoke about some of the young people that were part of the Young Voices project saying that after they being part of the project, they felt like a bit more confident. They thought, yeah, I got this. I want to do a bit more of this.
Yeah.
Was that your experience as well?
Yeah, but I got way more confident since that part.
Do you think you would have sat on this stage like 3 years ago?
No, definitely not.
Go on, Adam. So proud of you.
And you're now part of our advisory group.
Yep.
So what made you want to be part of that group after that first experience?
Just wanted to learn more about like different topics, because like in schools we don't really talk about topics in detail. They just show us a PowerPoint and just read that and just bugger off or whatever. But in the NSPCC you can actually like have a proper discussion about it and like show your experiences.
Yeah. And you wanted a little bit more of that.
Yeah.
And do you know what? I think you and some of the other young people that are part of that advisory group at the moment, there's a real sense of being kind of like socially and politically kind of switched on to this sort of stuff. Actually thinking as a young person, excuse me, I've got something to say about this and you lot need to hear it. So do you think that's kind of, is that true for you?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, brilliant. All right then. So Simone, can I finish with you, if that's
Yes.
okay? So, what's next?
What's next?
What's next? What's the next plan? So you've already heard that we've delivered elements of this work. We've undertaken some evaluation of this work. We struggled to work with one school who would be capable, able, had resources to kind of do all of the aspects of the whole school approach model. So that was always something that kind of like sat a bit uncomfortable with us.
Yeah.
Like, we know this bit's really good, we know this bit's really good, and this school has done 2 of the bits, and this one's done 1 of the bits. So how can we have some confidence that as a package, it's really, really effective? So what's the plan?
So the plan is all the different campaigns we've done, so the Young Voices that's been talked about, Empower, the focused education, bystander training, is all going to go to a whole school approach, and that will be given to the schools as a package. And what we hope is that they want to get us in to help them do this, get it off the ground, and then we want them to take it on themselves. We are going to be trialling this in a SEND school. They've been really supportive with the whole school approach and wanting to get us in because they recognise that it's actually worthwhile and they need this. It's like in the mix at the minute, isn't it? We haven't we started, but we haven't quite started in the it's little stepping stones at the moment.
So the school are in that process of the first phase, if you like, so we're undertaking the training, and we often reference that as the culture shift. So kind of it feels like the appropriate building block. So they've just very recently undertaken a sort of CSA introduction training locally. They're going along to the sort of the DSL safety planning session. They're about to start some of the HSB training as well. And then the plan is after half term, Simone and colleagues will be going into that group of students. I think we've got a group, quite an interesting group actually, of about 11 young people ranging from year 7 through to year 10. And we're going to start with Empower. So again, kind of revisit what's being taught, what do you think about it, what tweaks and adaptations need to be made to that. So.
And with that Empower model, this school actually took on board what we were saying and what the students were saying from using the framework. And we found another school we worked in, one of the PHSE teachers, RSE teachers, had really, really good relationships with their students. So they were able to deliver really good quality lessons. However, that teacher left that school, which was really...
That's really interesting, and it makes me think of something that others have said in other panels today about the value of the relationship, the person that's delivering.
Definitely.
And there's something about kind of what an individual brings to that. So what's their kind of culture, what's driving them, what really, really interests them in kind of doing this and doing it really well. And we always used to joke that any old potato could stand up and go through a PowerPoint and click it through, couldn't they? But there's something about some individuals that it just sparks with young people. Because I think young people, and I will speak for you, Adam, I apologise. I assume it's because young people know if someone really, really is invested in this work. Is that fair to say? Did you have
that's fair to
teachers
say.
that you knew really cared, and others you thought were just kind of dialing it in?
Not really. I actually never thought of it
Okay.
that way.
Okay.
And you guys, if you're given that space, you really want to talk about these topics that we do talk about that maybe you can't talk about in schools.
Okay. Has anyone got anything else that they're desperate to sort of share that I haven't kind of asked about, or?
Just coming back to a bit of feedback from the young people and that teacher relationship with the young people. When we were delivering the Young Voices, a couple of the schools actually wanted a teacher in the room. However, what we found was having that teacher in the room, the students wouldn't talk to us. As soon as that teacher left the room, they would open up. So it was just coming back to that bit of that relationship with that teacher, of letting them young people in that moment explore their world as it is in a healthy and unhealthy relationship. Because the ones where the teachers did allow that, the young people, they were able to go on their journey a little bit more quicker and a little bit more understanding, rather than the schools that were holding us back because of having that teacher in the room, not giving you that natural space to explore what they want to on their level.
And that's interesting because it creates a bit of a dilemma in terms of sustainability, because I guess as part of sustainability there's a bit of a kind of, this is how we're doing it, come and watch us sort of thing. But if that is potentially altering some of the kind of the safeness of that space, dare I say, that poses a little bit of a dilemma, which I'm sure we will bottom out. Brilliant. All right, thank you. Anything else you want to say, Adam?
No.
No? Okay, cool. So we're open to any questions if anyone would like to ask any. Hello. Hi.
My God.
I was just thinking in terms of, and I'm sorry if I don't really know, I'm sorry for my lack of knowledge.
No, it's okay.
I guess.
It's fine.
But with the whole school project, what is the potential for a permanent role in the school? Because there's safeguarding officers, but is there a safeguarding team? Is there people who are actually exploring this program and receiving training and then being hired by the school?
That's interesting.
Yeah. That's a really, really interesting question. It makes me think of that conversation we were having on the train about Grimsby and what they're doing. Claire, do you want to explain a little bit more about that?
Yes, so I will, but I was just going to say as well, I think it very much comes down, like I was saying about senior leadership buy-in and having that ownership of a whole school approach, is so important. I think it's also what we've learned is that it's really driven by individuals within schools.
Yeah.
So in some of the Empower schools and the Young Voices schools, we found that it might be their PSHE lead who was really ambitious about, let's do something different, let's try another approach, yes, come in and do this work. In the SEND school that we're working in to test this model at the moment, it's the head teacher who is just over the moon about being able to trial this project. So it was kind of different individuals in different schools.
And we've tried to kind of target our approach at different levels. So we've been kind of going in at kind of MAT leads and kind of head teacher levels, but also kind of speaking to individual teachers at the same time.
I think it's a really important point, though, is that if you could have one person in the school that championed this and had an eye to how how PSHE links to the policies and how that links to the training within the workforce development within the school, how all those things come together. If you could have an individual in the school that would champion that approach, it would make the whole process that much more streamlined. However, I don't know whether the schools have the resource to do that, and then it does come down very much to the individual ambitions of a teacher, of a senior leader, of the DSL, whoever it might be. But I think that's something that we've really learned, is that you will have probably one person, and then they might communicate that to other people, and then you get a group of people who are really interested. But if you could have one person, I think that would really make these projects much more successful. But just from what you said, Corinne, so in Grimsby is one of our other Together for Childhood sites. They've got a slightly different focus to us, so they're working in the area of prevention around child abuse and neglect in families facing multiple adversities. So they've got a bit of a broader kind of broader focus. Is that even a thing? But they're just coming at it from a slightly different angle and looking at neglect as well and various different forms of abuse. Something they've trialled over the last couple of years are having practitioners in school, so social work level and then kind of CSP2 level as well, working in schools 1 day a week in the capacity of building relationships with the teachers, the children, the families, delivering some elements of education in there as well, being a real conduit for early help. Yeah, so if families need help, if the children want help, if the teachers don't know how to deal with the situation, they go to that practitioner or those practitioners and they say, what do I do about this? Where can I get help for this child or for this family that, you know, gives them that support before it reaches a crisis point? So it's very much about that early help element of it. There has just been published the evaluation of that work. It has been so positive. You know, I know there's been trials of having social workers in schools in the past, which they've said it hasn't worked because their level of positive outcome has been that, well, we would expect to see the level of referrals go up in the local authority if this is working well, and the level of referrals haven't gone up. It doesn't make sense to me because, you know, if you're giving early help, you're not getting to that crisis point when it needs to go to children's social care or what have you. So I think, you know, again, it's on NSPCC Learning if you want to have a look at that. It's been a really positive pilot of that piece of work, I think in 6 schools, and they're still continuing that now. Having that point of contact is just such a support for people that perhaps don't even know that there's a food bank down the road or that there's somewhere you can go to have a conversation. If you're just feeling uncomfortable that a child might be being neglected, you don't want to make a referral, you don't want to call the police because you don't quite know what's going on within that family. You just need to have a safe, confidential conversation with somebody about what you might be able to do to support that family from the family support worker within the school, for instance. So yeah, if you're interested, I think that's a really, really good piece of work to look at and to build on.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hello.
I have a question for Adam.
Oh, great.
When the Young Voices group started, like first formed, and you're, I assume, like discussing the definitions of healthy and unhealthy relationships and figuring out what the differences were between the two, did you all kind of agree on what they were, or was there anything that really surprised you about like someone else's experience or someone else's opinion?
Well, when we started this whole project and we started to think about the campaign video for healthy relationships, most of the viewpoints were pretty much the same. We all were agreed to the same points as we had the same opinions on the topic. So most of them were just the same, no differences whatsoever.
Did you find something, because you were in some of the other groups as well, did you notice, so in Adam's experience there wasn't much kind of disparity, but did you find that in some of the other schools as well?
Yeah, so I found it when it come to LGBTQ+, how their experiences would be different to maybe somebody who is heterosexual, what the harm that they might get from unhealthy relationships. But that was it really, because it was like around about the same ages, they were all experiencing the same things. We didn't really come across a lot of stuff culturally, but there was different stuff around LGBTQ+, and obviously disabilities with their vulnerabilities. But other than that, no, it was pretty coherent across the board. They were saying this pretty much the same thing. But I would be interested to see now, how many years on, do these now still make point? Like, have we moved on? Have we gone back? Don't know. Hopefully not.
Hopefully.
Team NSPCC in the
Yes.
green.
No guessing where you're from.
Not subtle, is it? So, yeah, obviously I'm from the NSPCC, but I don't work with
No, you
you
do
guys,
not.
do
No.
I?
Disclaimer.
Together for Childhood in Plymouth. So thanks, all of you. I guess I've got a couple of comments, really. Like the first one, Adam, it's to you and your colleagues and your peers who put together that film. Just like it's already been said, I hope you're really proud of what you did.
I really am.
Yeah.
You should be, because I was watching that thinking it comes across so differently with you guys up there. Your words, you speaking them, you putting your faces to difficult topics, which is really brave. So hats off to you and your fellow peers. So well done, first of all. And the second thing, I suppose, is that, so in my previous role at NSPCC, I spent a lot of time working with Bristol primary schools predominantly, but also secondary schools. And I remember being in a meeting where there were two PSHE colleagues. So PSHE, if anyone doesn't know, Personal Social Health Education. And it made me realise just how different relationships and sex education is in each school. So one colleague was there saying, I teach 20 relationships and sex education lessons a week across the whole school. It's mainly me with 2 other willing colleagues who don't mind teaching it because it's scary.
Yeah.
Another colleague in that meeting, she said, I've got 20 teachers across the school teaching relationships and sex education because it was delivered in form time. And having worked in secondary schools, I know what it's like when you're trying to shoehorn a quick session, 20 minutes in form time, about difficult conversations about pornography and consent and healthy relationships. And I just thought, wow, there's such a variation in the experience and the information that young people are having access to in these, and it's the main place that young people should be getting good quality information.
Yes.
And yet it varies so vastly. So it's just to name that, really. And you've all said schools and teachers are under real pressures.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky situation. And one thing I wanted to add that you haven't mentioned, but that is available to all schools across, all secondary schools across the UK, is the Talk Relationship Service from the NSPCC and the PSHE Association. So that provides 2 sets of training to help schools do some of the things that you've been talking about. So it helps school leaders and it helps those who are delivering relationships and sex education to build their confidence. It's been mentioned so many times today, hasn't it? Teachers are great at what they do. They've got skills to teach.
And they want to. They want to do
They
this
really
work.
want to
There's
do
a
it and they
real
want to get it
drive.
right. But they haven't always got the confidence
Yeah.
to tackle these tricky subjects.
Confidence and time.
So there's training available, online modules. There are lesson plans available that go from year 7 right up to year 11. And there's also a helpline, because you've mentioned sometimes whatever your role is in school, you don't always know what to do with a tricky conversation that you have with a young person. And there's a free helpline that the NSPCC offer for colleagues, for adults in the community, anyone, to call and say, I've just had this conversation with a young person. I don't know what to do with it or how to respond in a really supportive way. Any thoughts? So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, brilliant. And we are working really closely with the Talk Relationships team, and we're quite hopeful that the phase 2 of the work will feature Empower, which should be very exciting. I think we've maybe got time for one more question, and then I think we're all going to be treated to a lovely poem to round off the day. I'm assuming anyone else has got a question. Yes, we've got one more, hooray. Hi.
Thank you. I feel like it's kind of quite a giant question, so maybe it's just more kind of putting it out there as something to consider. So I guess it's thank you for all your presentations. It's so interesting to hear all the kind of different angles on it. And I guess it seems like you're really focusing on is prevention, right, and kind of cultures of prevention. And I'm really aware that when we did a survey ahead of this event asking young people's perspectives, one of the things that kept coming up was people saying when there is peer abuse within the school between students, there's this feeling that staff are like really allergic, really underskilled. At the greenhouse we have so many young people, I'm sure other people relate to this as well, who've dropped out of education or out of mainstream education because of the impact of having to go back into school and see their abuser.
Absolutely.
And I guess I know you spoke about the CSA Centre of Excellence's new guidance, which is brilliant, and raising the profile of that sounds great. I guess I was curious whether you felt that the wider confidence in the school was also reflected in the ability to sort of manage situations like that, as sensitive and complex as they are.
I think you're absolutely right. And in a previous role, I worked with young people who displayed harmful sexual behaviour, very often within school settings and towards peers. So it's kind of, we would see very frequently the impact for both the child that had been harmed and also the child that had caused the harm. It was significant and a huge disruption. And I think, yes, our work is focusing on the prevention aspect of that, but we know that that's a generational shift.
Yeah.
You know, if we're starting the prevention activity over here, it's going to take years and years and years and years until we've got no more victims of sexual abuse. It's going to take a long time. So in the meantime, we have to also think about what we would refer to as tertiary service, so the recovery, the kind of prevention of further harm, prevention of recidivism kind of services as well. And I think sometimes I'm going to sort of talk about kind of commissioning strategies within local authorities and things like that. There tends to be a kind of either-or conversation when actually they're both part of the same thing. And I think the unfortunate reality for lots of young people is that it's a real lottery, depending on where you live. Very fortunate in Bristol in that you've kind of got services like the Greenhouse and Be Safe as well, so you've kind of got lots of really great local staff. And then you might go down the road to Gloucester.
Yeah, got nothing.
And in Plymouth, we're kind of at the beginnings of a real focus on developing a new commissioning strategy. So our local authority commissioners saying that actually this is important work and we need to fund it to do that. And it can't just be the work of social workers. There will be some aspects of that, but how can we bring in other kind of therapeutic providers? How can we bring in drama and dance? What are the aspects of work that we can kind of offer to our policing services, and what's our CAMS service doing as well? So that real need for a kind of a coordinated and joined up commissioning strategy. So regardless of where you live across this country, if you're experiencing this, you're going to get the support that you need at the time that you need it. That's a bit of a I wish kind of situation as opposed to a, oh, here it is right now. But I think what we found in Plymouth, I think, by having these conversations with sort of strategic decision makers and kind of policy makers and commissioning leaders locally in the city about prevention, we're also switching them on to that conversation about, and then what happens to those people that actually are being harmed as well. So we're not there yet, but we've got lots of ambition, I think, to kind of get there. And in the meantime, I think you're absolutely right that actually that's part of the paralysis, dare I say, that a lot of members of staff within schools are experiencing. Yes, this child has revealed this information to me. What on earth? What do I do with this now? Because there's nobody out there that I can refer on to that I know is, I have some confidence that they're going to approach this in a truly kind and trauma-informed and thoughtful and family-orientated way, really. So I think we've all got kind of power, I think, there to shout about that a little bit more, and to really kind of say it's not good enough and raise, like events like this, really raise the profile of it and say, actually, this isn't good enough because we are letting down generations of children and young people.
Yeah.
Sorry, a bit of a rant, but come with me.
A little bit.
End the day with a rant.
I want to thank our panelists for such an enriching contribution, and I also want to recognise your commitment and your clear action to work towards prevention of child sexual abuse in the region where you work. And I know that your efforts, your partnership efforts, are very much lauded, recognised by your partners in the region, the police and so on. So that's been really special. Thank you very much. And, well, what can we say, Adam, you have really brought the whole thing to life for us. Thank you for taking us through the evolution of making a video, and your voice is clearly very much valued here today, which leads nicely into our next topic, so thank you. Before we finish, we have something very special to share with you. I'm hoping Simone is here. Is Simone? Excellent, Simone. So Simone is coordinator of the Voice Project at the Greenhouse, and the Voice Project is all about ensuring that the voices of young survivors, but also their parents, are heard. And I believe that Simone is going to share a poem that's been written by a parent, a person called Sharon. And Sharon is the parent of a young survivor and also a member of the Voice Project. So I'm going to pass over to Simone, and then I'll be back to let you know what we're doing next. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Lovely to see you all here today. Can we just have a, I don't know, maybe a little stand up and shake, because that was quite a heavy topic, but it was a really good. I was sat up at the back and I popped in and out, was really listening, and thank you for all your contributions. So yes, I work as part of the Voice Project, myself and Ali, who was on the panel as well. So we co-facilitate conversations and voices from parents and carers and young people, and it's really important to get their voices out there and heard. So I have actually got two poems, well, a section of another poem that the young people have created together as well, but it's just a section as we're still working on it. But I am going to do the parents' poem first, and this is called Don't Worry About the Shoes. It's 20 to 9 and Johnny is late. You're half expecting him to run through the gate. But an email to the school was sent late Friday night, just explaining briefly that things just aren't right. But you may not know this while pacing the floor, and it's taken all of his mum's strength just to walk out the door. You see, Johnny has told her the most devastating news. The last thing she cares about now is Johnny wearing the right shoes. The family is in crisis and Mum has hardly slept. Johnny doesn't understand why Mummy sat and wept. He had to talk to a policeman and he's been to see a nurse. All of this is not nice, but not knowing, that's worse. Fast forward now, a year has passed, and Johnny, well, he seems fine. He's had all his counselling, so why can't he be on time? His behaviour has changed and his homework isn't being done. This just isn't acceptable. So a phone call is made to Mum. But Mum cannot cope with what's being asked. This is now a breaking point for her. Just please, no more tasks. Just back off my child and give him some space. We're doing our best and can only go at our pace. So please ask Johnny how he feels and ask his mum what he may need. And remember, this can change any minute, any day, or any week. You see, trauma, it lasts a lifetime. And you have to live with it every day. You may not struggle all the time, but it never really goes away. We're not asking for special treatment. Our battles we can pick and choose. Just try to be mindful of Johnny, and thank God you're not in his mum's shoes. So that was the poem written by one of our parents. And I have just an extract from a poem that we did collaboratively with some of our young people who attend our young people groups. Their age is from 16 to 18. And we did a little poem around school and what it was that they learnt. I learnt my shyness is a defence for outsiders. I learnt keeping hectic covers things up. I wish my younger self knew I could breathe deep and slow and change my state. And I wish my younger self knew I had more time. I could feel so rushed. I am learning for myself and thriving for myself. I am learning that karma comes back to you hard. And I am learning you can still be reborn. I am learning to love myself. I am learning I am not fly, I am levitation. So that was just an extract from the Young People's Poem. Thank you.